Good day, everyone. I am Mayame Pimuli, and my part is to discuss the interpretative reading. One of the oldest form of speech is the oral interpretation literature. This performance is variously called oral reading, reading aloud, or interpretative reading. In 18th and 19th century, the oral performance of literature was known as elocution. Today, it is referred to as expression. Expression means the process of making known one's thought, ideas, feelings, and emotions. Ancient literature, before the invention of printing, was originally read aloud. Historian reader, words poets recite their poem during festivals, even going from town to town or as bards. However, with the advent of printing, reading became silent. Today, however, many believe that literature is meant to be heard, giving the right interpreter and the right audience. Most literature will be appreciated when read aloud. Interpretation is generally known as the reading aloud of reading material such as radio or television, commercials, expository paper, news item, and announcements, but traditionally it is associated with the oral reading of literature. Interpretative reading, in its simplest form, consists of one person reading aloud to another. For example, college girl reading instruction from a magazine to her roommate on how to put or apply eye makeup correctly. In its most complex form, it is an art by which a reader communicates the meaning of the great literature to an appreciation audience. For example, Sir Charles Lawton read a passage from the Bible to host assembly of business people. Three major components of IR: the author, who writes the piece, the interpreter, who reads it, the audience, who listen to it and process oral communication. In oral interpretation, the interpreter must be concerned not only in using his voice but also in delivering the message of the literary selection of the appreciative audience. There are three tasks that you must be prepared to accomplish if you wish to be an effective interpretative reader. Three tasks to be an effective interpretative reader. First, try to understand the meaning of the selection. You must know the general content of the selection. Second, work for effective expression of the meaning of the selection through the use of fundamental techniques of public speaking during the actual performance. Even if you have memorized the selection, you should use a manuscript to constantly remind your audience that your thought and feelings you express originated from the selection and not from you. Avoid burying your nose in the manuscript. Remember to maintain eye contact with the audience. This vivid experiencing of the idea at the moment of the utterance is considered as the lifeblood of the effective speech, especially on oral interpretation of literature. The interpreter makes real the scenes, makes lifelike the character, and renders natural and convincing the mood of the selection. This enables his listeners to see the things for themselves and actually feel the emotion in the literary piece. Now let's move on to the reading of prose. Prose includes the largest classification of literature, namely essays, speeches, short stories, sermons, lectures, novels, and other forms of informal composition. The principles applied in the reading of poetry may also be applied in the reading prose. The first consideration is As an interpreter, it is to present the author's purpose. Is it to inform, to persuade, or to entertain? The second consideration is, do you recognize the imagery used by the author? Imagery is anything that comes to mind, brought about by our experiences as we respond to the printed words. Images are perceived through the use of the senses. As an effective interpreter, you should be able to communicate to the listeners and the relationship among sound, sense, and structure. Now let's move on to the monologue. Monologue is a speech given by a single character in a story. In drama, it is vocalization of characters' thoughts. In literature, the verbalization. Traditionally, a device used in a theater speech to be given on stage. But nowadays, it's used to extend the film and television. Now let's move on to the example of a monologue. Now let's look to the example of monologue. A monologue speaks at people, not with people. Many plays and shows involving performances begin with a single character giving a monologue to the audience before the plot or action begins. For example, envision a ringleaders of a circus. Let's watch the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to Weber's Circus. Let our gunslinging, whip-cracking cast take you away to the Wild West. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sit back, relax, and enjoy. It's showtime!
The ringleader's speech is directed to the audience. His monologue helps him build anticipation and excitement in his viewers, while he foreshadows some of the thrills and performance will contain. Now let's move on to the importance of monologues. Monologues gives the audience and the other character access. Monologues gives the audience and the other character access. Monologues gives the audience. Monologues gives the Monologue give the audience and the other character access to what particular character is thinking, either through a speech of the vocalization of their thoughts. I have here also a video of the example of a monologue. As a technique, I have here an example of monologue in literature as a technique principally used in stage or screen. The best example of monologue in literature are found in dramatic literature, most notably in Shakespeare's dramas. Below is the selection of the argument. Now let's move on to the importance of monologues. Monologue give the audience and the other character access to what particular character is thinking, either through a speech of the vocalization of their thoughts. I have here an example of monologue in literature as a technique principally used in stage or screen. The best example of monologue in literature are found in dramatic literature, most notably in Shakespeare's dramas. Below is the selection of the arguably the most famous monologue in literature, Silike. especially from Act 3, Scene 1 of the tragedy Hamlet. This soliloquy begins with the well-known words to be or not to be. That is the questions. I have here the video of this scene.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life.
This scene reveals to the audience that Hamlet is contemplating suicide. His words express an eternal thought process that we could normally not be able to witness. The only reason that Shakespeare has Hamlet speak these words out loud is so that the audience, not anyone else in the play, can hear them. He used soliloquy to share Hamlet's unstable state and disquieting thoughts.